I never thought a simple laugh could change everything. It happened on a quiet Sunday, right at the dining table. My daughter-in-law looked at my ring, the one I've worn for over 30 years, and laughed. Not a shy laugh, a sharp one. The kind that cuts a little too deep. Everyone at the table went silent. My son tried to smile it off, but I saw the look in her eyes. It wasn't just amusement, it was mockery. I wanted to let it go. I told myself it was nothing. But deep down, something felt wrong. That laugh, it stayed with me. It followed me home. It echoed in my head that night while I washed the same dishes she refused to touch. The next morning, I caught her whispering to someone on the phone. I didn't hear much, just one sentence that froze me in place: "She has no idea who he really belongs to." That was the moment everything began to shift. I didn't know it yet, but that single laugh was the start of a truth I'd spent my whole life running from. Before long, a test would arrive in the mail, one that would shatter everything I believed about family, loyalty, and love. That ring she laughed at, it wasn't just jewelry. It was a key to a secret that could destroy us all. I grew up with little, learning early that life doesn't hand you anything without hard work. I married young, raised my son with every ounce of love I had, and after my husband passed, I held on to the memories we shared. One of those memories was this ring, the one I wore every day. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't expensive, but it was his gift on the day we promised each other forever. To me, it was everything. My son grew up kind, ambitious, and determined to make his life different from ours. He worked hard, went to school, built a career, and eventually met the woman he would marry. She was sophisticated, poised, and confident in every room she entered. From the start, I felt a distance between us. She never hid her opinions about our home, our ways, or me. Her polite smiles often carried a hint of condescension, and she had this way of looking at me like I was outdated, like I belonged to another era. The tension came to a head during a family dinner not long after the wedding. I had worn my ring, the one I cherished, and she noticed. She laughed, a cold, sharp laugh that made the room go quiet. At first, I tried to smile, thinking it was a harmless joke, but her eyes were anything but joking. My son shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsure how to respond, and I felt my heart tighten in ways I hadn't expected. That laugh lingered long after the dishes were cleared and the lights were dimmed. It wasn't just a laugh at a ring. It was a laugh at me, at everything I represented. And in that moment, I realized this was only the beginning. That laugh planted a seed of doubt I couldn't ignore. I began to notice things I had overlooked before, small signs that something was not quite right, pieces of a puzzle I didn't yet know existed. It was a simple laugh, yet it marked the start of a chain of events that would unravel everything I believed about family, loyalty, and truth. The house, once warm and familiar, began to feel different. The air carried a quiet tension that I couldn't ignore, a weight that pressed down on every conversation and every glance. My daughter-in-law moved through it like she owned it, her every word polished but sharp, her smiles often hiding a subtle criticism. At family gatherings, she would compliment a dish I had made, only to follow it with a remark about how she did things differently at her home. At first, I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was imagining the malice. But over time, the pattern became impossible to ignore. My son, caught in the middle, tried to mediate. He would laugh awkwardly at her jokes, smooth over her comments, and turn to me with a gentle, apologetic smile. But I noticed something changing in him too. He would pause before speaking, hesitate in his tone, and sometimes glance at her with doubt rather than understanding. I could see him being pulled between the woman he had chosen and the family he loved, and it was tearing him apart. Meanwhile, small things began slipping through the cracks, things that unsettled me more than I could explain. Phone calls whispered in corners of the house, objects missing from their usual places, subtle signs that something was off. I tried to ignore them at first, but then came the morning I opened her jewelry box. My ring, the one she had laughed at during that dinner, was there, perfectly polished and gleaming. When I confronted her, she smiled and swore she hadn't touched it. But the sting of that laugh, the glint of that ring, and the unease that had been building all came crashing together. It was a simple object, a ring, yet it carried far more weight than I could have imagined. I realized then that nothing in this house was quite as it seemed. Every word, every gesture, every smile seemed to hide something underneath, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were standing on the edge of a truth that would change everything. The cracks were widening, and I knew, deep down, that the calm we once had was only an illusion. Something was coming, something that would not let us turn away or pretend we hadn't seen it. I had begun to notice whispers, quiet, almost imperceptible conversations that seemed to stop the moment I entered a room. At first, I convinced myself it was my imagination, that perhaps I was being overly sensitive, reading too much into ordinary family chatter. But then one afternoon, as I passed by the living room, a phrase froze me in my tracks. "I don't think she knows, she doesn't even know who he really belongs to," my daughter-in-law said, her voice soft but sharp, as though she were speaking to someone who already understood. I pressed myself against the wall, every heartbeat loud in my chest. The words repeated in my mind, over and over, refusing to be ignored. I had never heard her speak like that about my son, never imagined she would question something so fundamental. And yet there it was. A doubt planted in a single sentence, subtle but devastating. That night, I could hardly sleep. I walked through the quiet house, touching the furniture my hands had polished for years, feeling the cold of the windows, the emptiness of the rooms. I thought about my husband, about the life we built together, about the promises we made. And I began to ask questions I had never dared to ask before. Was my son truly my husband's child? Had something happened all those years ago that I had forgotten or overlooked? The thought made my stomach turn. I sat at the edge of my bed, the ring on my finger feeling heavier than ever, as if it were a chain reminding me of everything I had loved and lost. Tears came slowly at first, then in an unrelenting wave. I blamed myself, thinking I should have noticed something sooner, should have protected my family better. Loneliness wrapped around me like a thick blanket. I realized that while I had devoted my life to raising and loving my son, there were truths I could not see, truths that might be hidden even from me. I remembered the letters from my late husband, the ones I had read and reread countless times. Could there have been a hint I missed? A clue buried in memories I had dismissed as ordinary. My mind raced, spinning through possibilities, imagining scenarios too painful to speak aloud. The weight of uncertainty pressed on me, relentless and suffocating, leaving me in a state of helplessness I had not felt since my husband passed. And yet, through the tears and the fear, a stubborn determination began to form. I could not ignore what I had heard. I needed answers, even if they hurt. Even if they changed everything I thought I knew. That single phrase, whispered in my absence, had opened a door to a truth I was both terrified and desperate to find. The days that followed were heavy with suspicion and quiet observation. I watched her movements, her gestures, her conversations, hoping for a clue, a slip, anything that would tell me what I needed to know. Every smile, every laugh, every casual remark was examined for hidden meaning. I became a shadow in my own home, moving silently, listening carefully, piecing together fragments of a puzzle I was afraid to complete. But the fear of what I might discover was balanced by a growing resolve. I knew the next step I would take could change everything. I had to know the truth about my son, about my family, about the life we had all believed in. The whisper of her words haunted me like a ghost, echoing through my thoughts day and night. "You don't even know who he really belongs to." That sentence lingered, a warning and a challenge, and I realized that I could not turn away. The truth, whatever it was, demanded to be faced. The house felt colder than usual that morning, though the sun shone through the windows like any other day. I moved quietly, careful not to draw attention to the nervous energy pulsing through me. My mind kept circling back to her words, the ones that had haunted me for weeks. "You don't even know who he really belongs to." I knew then that I could no longer ignore the possibility that something had been hidden from me for decades, something so deep it could shatter everything I believed about my family. I began searching for clues. Old letters my husband had written, neatly stacked in drawers, became objects of intense scrutiny. Every line, every phrase, every casual remark was examined for meaning I might have missed the first time. I traced the dates, the places he mentioned, the names of friends and colleagues. And slowly, inconsistencies began to appear, small at first: the way he described events, the details of visits that never happened the way he said, times when I should have remembered him but could not. The old photo album, a gift from my husband years ago, became a source of revelation. Hidden behind the carefully arranged pages, I discovered a photograph that had somehow slipped my notice all these years. My son looked different in that picture, younger yet familiar in ways that felt strange. The image, slightly faded at the edges, seemed ordinary, yet I could feel the weight of it pressing against my chest. Something about it didn't match the story I had been told, the story I had cherished for decades. Medical records were next. I had kept them in a cabinet, tucked away for safekeeping. Flipping through them, I noticed discrepancies in dates and notes that seemed unusual. Each discovery built upon the last, a growing thread of unease that began to wrap tightly around me. I remembered late nights with my husband, conversations filled with laughter and promises, and wondered if some of those moments had been shadows masking a truth I could not yet name. Each night I lay awake, imagining possibilities I wished I could ignore. And yet, the more I imagined, the more I knew I had to act. I could not live with this uncertainty, this gnawing suspicion that my son's story might be different from the one I had been told. After days of quiet deliberation, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and necessary. I contacted a testing service and discreetly ordered a DNA test, careful to keep it hidden from everyone in the house. I did not know how long it would take to arrive, nor how I would feel when it finally came. My hands shook as I sealed the request, the weight of the unknown pressing down on me. I thought about my son, about my husband, about the ring I still wore, and wondered if everything I believed would hold together once the truth was revealed. And then the envelope arrived. I remember it clearly: ordinary, plain, unassuming, yet it carried the promise of revelation. I held it in my hands, feeling a mixture of dread and anticipation that made my pulse pound in my ears. My fingers trembled as I considered opening it. Every instinct screamed to leave it closed, to pretend ignorance, but I could not. I needed to know. When I finally picked it up, my hands would not stop shaking. My heart raced as I imagined what the results could show. Would it confirm my fears, or would it restore the life I had built on love and trust? The room seemed to close in around me, the quiet pressing on my ears. And in that moment, I understood that nothing could prepare me for what I was about to discover. I held the envelope in my hands, my fingers trembling so much I could barely grip it. For weeks, I had built up courage for this moment, and yet now that it was here, I felt a sudden, paralyzing fear. My chest tightened, my throat dry, and every instinct in me screamed to step away, to pretend I had never seen it. But I could not. I had to know. Just as I was about to tear the envelope open, the sound of her heels clicking against the floor froze me in place. She appeared in the doorway, her smile sharp and deliberate, eyes glinting with the satisfaction of someone who senses they are about to see chaos unfold. I wanted to hide the envelope, to push it aside, but it was too late. She was here. Her voice was casual at first, almost mocking. "Finding something interesting?" she asked, tilting her head as if to look into my very thoughts. The calmness in her tone made my blood run cold. I tried to reply, but my words caught in my throat, trembling with a mix of fear and fury. Then came the sharp jab, the words I had feared most. "Even your ring's fake," she said, her tone dripping with disdain, "just like your so-called perfect family." It felt as though the floor had fallen out from under me. I stared at her, the envelope clutched to my chest, as every memory, every moment I had cherished with my son and late husband, seemed to crumble. The air between us crackled with tension, filled with accusations, insults, and years of unspoken resentment. I could feel the walls closing in, the years of sacrifice, love, and patience pressing down on me as I realized that the betrayal was not just hidden in the DNA test or in a family secret. It was here, in this moment, in her words and her deliberate cruelty. My voice trembled, but I forced myself to speak, to defend what I had built, to protect the truth I had worked so hard to preserve. She laughed, a cold, calculating laugh that made my stomach twist. Her eyes sparkled with the satisfaction of someone who believes they have won before the game has even begun. The confrontation escalated, words flying back and forth, truths and accusations layered over each other until the air was thick with anger, hurt, and desperation. I wanted to scream, to cry, to shake her until she understood the weight of what she had said, but all I could do was stand there, holding the envelope that now felt like both a lifeline and a curse. Every second stretched into eternity, the tension so heavy it seemed almost impossible to breathe. And then it hit me, this moment, this confrontation, was not the end. It was only the beginning. Whatever was inside that envelope, whatever truth it contained, would change everything. The daughter-in-law had pushed me to the edge, and I knew that when I opened it, nothing would ever be the same again. I stared at the envelope, its plain exterior suddenly feeling unbearably heavy. My hands trembled as I tore it open, the paper crinkling like the fragile calm I had clung to for weeks. Inside was a single sheet, folded neatly, but it carried a weight far heavier than any document I had ever held. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears as I unfolded it. The words stared back at me. My son was not biologically my husband's child. The paper felt unreal, as if the letters had no right to exist in the world I had known, the life I had built with him and for him. I sank into a chair, clutching the ring on my finger, the familiar weight now a painful reminder of everything I thought I knew and everything that was slipping away. Memories came rushing back, unbidden and relentless. During those years of hardship, when my husband had been away for months, stretched thin by work and responsibilities I could not share, there had been a moment, a brief, stolen moment of weakness, a fleeting connection with a man who had understood my loneliness and my fears. It had been nothing more than a single night, a choice I had buried deep inside myself, a secret I had believed would never matter. Yet now, it had returned to confront me in the most devastating way. I felt my knees give way, my body shaking as guilt and regret tore through me. I had loved my husband fiercely, and I had loved my son even more. But the revelation of this truth, hidden for so long, left me drowning in self-hatred. I felt as if every good thing I had done, every sacrifice I had made, had been erased by a single, human mistake. And then there was the ring. The one she had laughed at. The one I had worn for decades. In that moment, I saw it in a new light. It had belonged to the man I had once loved and lost, a reminder of both passion and pain, of love and impossibility. Its weight, once comforting, now pressed down on me like a chain, reminding me that some truths cannot be undone, no matter how deeply they are buried. She was there, my daughter-in-law, who had hovered nearby, her curiosity unmistakable. I had not realized she had been listening, her sharp eyes widening as she slowly pieced together what I had discovered. The moment of recognition flashed across her face, a mixture of shock and disbelief. She realized, in that instant, that the truth I had uncovered was far more complicated than she had imagined. For a long moment, we were both silent, the room heavy with unspoken understanding. The world I had known, the family I had loved, seemed suspended on the edge of revelation, ready to tip in any direction. And in that silence, I understood that nothing would ever be the same again. The laughter, the sneers, the subtle insults, they were all meaningless against the weight of this truth. I held the ring tighter, as if clinging to the past could somehow anchor me. But I knew it could not. The DNA test had shattered illusions, unearthed buried secrets, and revealed a history I could never rewrite. And yet, in the midst of guilt and despair, a strange clarity emerged. The past could not be changed, but the future, how I chose to face it, was still mine. The moment I never imagined came sooner than I expected. My son entered the room, his face pale, eyes sharp, and every step he took seemed to echo the storm raging inside him. He had seen the DNA results. He had heard the words, pieced together the fragments of my past, and now stood before me with a mixture of confusion, betrayal, and hurt so deep it left the air thick and heavy. I tried to speak, to explain, but the words caught in my throat. My son looked at me, searching my face for something, anything, that could make sense of the revelation. His hands trembled slightly, his jaw tight, and I saw in him the raw pain of someone who felt the foundation of their life had been pulled from beneath them. Then she spoke. My daughter-in-law, sharp and cruel, couldn't resist the opportunity. Her voice cut through the tension like a blade. "You see, you're not even a real Benson family," she said, her words aimed like darts at my son's heart. Her eyes flicked to me, triumphant, as if she had orchestrated every piece of this destruction. Anger flared in my son's eyes, followed by confusion and disbelief. "How could you keep this from me?" he asked, his voice cracking. "All these years, everything you told me, was it all a lie?" He turned to his wife, his hurt mixing with incredulity. "And you were part of this?" His gaze held both accusation and anguish. The room was thick with silence for a moment, the kind that presses on your chest and makes every breath a struggle. Then came tears, mine, the ones that spilled quietly in the corners of the room. Words came in bursts, accusations and explanations clashing, raw and unfiltered. I spoke, trying to explain the circumstances, the mistakes, the choices I had made long ago. I told him about the hardship, the loneliness, the fleeting mistake that had changed everything. But no words could bridge the gap that had opened between us. He shook his head, a mixture of sorrow and anger etched into every line of his face. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the house. The door closed behind him with a finality that echoed like a verdict. I sank to the floor, clutching the ring tighter than ever. My chest heaved, my tears fell, and for a long moment, I felt utterly alone. The weight of regret, the sting of betrayal, and the silence of the house pressed down on me like a physical force. Her laughter, once sharp and dismissive, now felt like a distant echo. She had won this round, but at a cost I could not measure. I sat there, holding the ring that had begun this chain of revelations, my fingers tracing its worn edges, thinking of my late husband, the son I had raised, and the mistakes I had made. For hours, I remained in that quiet, empty room, alone with my thoughts, my guilt, and my heartbreak. And yet, somewhere deep inside me, a small spark of hope began to flicker. I thought I had lost him forever, but I knew that even in the face of such pain, redemption might still be possible. I didn't know how or when, but I knew that I would have to find a way to make things right. The tension in the house lingered for days, heavy and suffocating. I sat quietly, lost in thought, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The laughter, the insults, the betrayal, it all seemed so final, yet something in the back of my mind refused to let the story end there. Then, slowly, the truth began to reveal itself. Small details I had missed at first now made sense. The way she always asked questions about family history, the way she seemed to take an unusual interest in my husband's possessions, the subtle digs that never truly had to do with me. It wasn't the ring she cared about, it was what it represented, the legacy of a family she wanted to claim for herself. Her mockery, her laughter, her deliberate provocations, they had all been part of a plan. She had hoped to unsettle me, to provoke me into mistakes, to find something that could be used to her advantage. Her goal had never been to humiliate me for the ring itself. No, the ring had been a tool, a lure to uncover family secrets, particularly anything that could lead her closer to inheritance, to power, to control. Ironically, the very thing she had mocked the DNA test became her undoing. It exposed her greed instead. As the truth unfolded, her reactions betrayed her. The laughter that had once cut through me now reflected a different kind of fear, the fear of being exposed, of her schemes unraveling in front of everyone. I could see the calculations in her eyes, the panic hidden behind the mask of confidence she had worn so carefully. I realized then that the pain, the betrayal, the heartbreak, it had all led to this clarity. The ring, the secrets, the confrontation, it wasn't just about mistakes or sins of the past. It was about uncovering the truth, revealing intentions, and facing the reality that some people wear smiles to hide their true motives. Alone, I held the ring in my hands, feeling its familiar weight, a reminder of love lost, mistakes made, and yet, resilience endured. I thought of my son, of the family I had built, and of the lessons the past had forced upon me. I understood that while betrayal and pain are part of life, so too is the power to uncover the truth, to confront deception, and to begin the slow, deliberate work of healing. I knew the journey was not yet over. Rebuilding trust, mending broken hearts, and facing the consequences of choices long past would take time. But in that quiet moment, holding the ring that had started it all, I felt a strange sense of peace. I had uncovered the truth. I had faced the betrayal. And somehow, even in the aftermath, I knew I would find a way forward. For anyone watching, I thought, the lesson is simple yet profound. some secrets are dangerous, some laughter hides intentions, but courage, clarity, and truth always have their place. What would you do if you found yourself in my shoes? Would you uncover the truth, even if it shattered everything you knew? And with that question hanging in the air, the story, though painful, left a spark of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, the truth has the power to set us free. Days passed in a silence so heavy it seemed to press against the walls of the house. Every corner, every room, felt emptier without his presence. I moved through the house like a shadow, touching the furniture, the photos, the little mementos of a life built together, but everything felt hollow. The ring on my finger, once a symbol of love and memory, now weighed like a reminder of loss, regret, and unanswered questions. Then, one quiet afternoon, the sound of the front door opening broke the stillness. I froze, my heart racing. It was him, my son. He stood there, hesitant, eyes scanning the room, searching, perhaps for a sign that forgiveness was possible, that love could survive even this storm. His gaze met mine, and for a moment, words failed both of us. The silence was thick, but it was not the suffocating silence of despair, it was the fragile silence of reconciliation waiting to begin. He walked slowly toward me, each step deliberate, carrying the weight of his own anger, confusion, and grief. Then, as if unable to contain the emotions any longer, he broke into tears. I felt my own eyes well, a mixture of relief and sorrow flooding through me. We spoke quietly at first, words catching in our throats, fragmented and trembling. Apologies tumbled out, his for leaving without understanding, mine for hiding the truth for so long, for the choices I had made in a moment of weakness. "I've missed you," he said, voice breaking. I couldn't see clearly at first, and I was angry, at everything, at everyone. But now, I see. And then came the words I will never forget, words that wrapped around my heart like a balm I didn't know I needed. "You may not have given me his blood, Mom, but you gave me everything else." I felt a shiver run through me, a combination of relief, love, and the quiet ache of years spent worrying, sacrificing, and hoping for this moment. In that instant, I realized that the bonds we build through care, sacrifice, and unconditional love can outweigh biology, that family is more than blood, and that forgiveness is a bridge that can span even the deepest divides. We cried together, held each other, and for the first time in weeks, the tension, the fear, the heartbreak began to lift. The house felt warmer, softer, filled again with the possibility of laughter, conversation, and healing. I thought of my late husband, of the life we had shared, and I felt a quiet gratitude that, despite all mistakes and misunderstandings, love had survived. Even as tears ran down our faces, I knew the journey of rebuilding would be slow. Trust, once shaken, does not return overnight. But this moment, the raw honesty, the acknowledgement of pain, and the willingness to forgive, was a start. It was proof that even in the aftermath of betrayal and heartbreak, redemption and understanding are possible. The truth, once hidden, has a way of surfacing, and her time of control, subtle as it had been, was coming to an end. Slowly, the web she had woven, carefully planned digs, manipulations, and deceit, began to unravel. Every question she had asked about family history, every sly remark about possessions or inheritance, now revealed its real purpose. It had never been about the ring or me. It had always been about claiming something that did not belong to her. I watched quietly as the son confronted her, the anger and hurt in his voice like thunder in the room. The carefully constructed facade she had maintained so flawlessly over months of subtle manipulation began to crack. She stumbled over words, her confidence faltering as the consequences of her actions pressed down on her. The revelation of her schemes, the inheritance, the lies, the calculated mockery, was like sunlight exposing a shadow she could no longer hide behind. "You used me. You used us. And for what?" my son demanded, his voice raw with both disappointment and sorrow. "Everything I thought we had, everything I trusted, it was all a game to you." Her pride, which had carried her through countless social gatherings and quiet victories, could not withstand the weight of exposure. She tried to justify her actions, to twist the narrative in her favor, but the evidence, the truth, and the clarity in my son's eyes left her with no escape. The anger, the manipulation, and the cruelty that had marked her presence in our home were laid bare for all to see. My son, finally clear in his own heart, made the decision I had feared but understood. He filed for separation. His choice was not just about legal boundaries, it was about reclaiming peace, protecting the family he loved, and refusing to let deceit control his life. The weight of betrayal was heavy, but the clarity of truth gave him the strength to act. I watched from a distance, feeling a mixture of sorrow and relief. My heart ached not just for the loss, but for the lessons learned and the clarity gained. When the confrontation ended, I approached her quietly. My voice was calm, firm, and unwavering. "I forgive you," I said, not because what she did was excusable, but because holding on to anger would not heal anything. "But I will not allow anyone to disrespect me again. Never. This family deserves honesty and love, and I will protect that." She left the house that day with her schemes exposed, her pride battered, and her control ended. And though her actions had caused pain, there was a strange sense of closure in witnessing the truth finally prevail. For the first time in months, the house felt lighter. The tension lifted, replaced by the quiet promise of a restored order, a family grounded in honesty, love, and the understanding that true bonds are built on more than appearances or entitlement. I held the ring once more, feeling its weight differently now. It was no longer just a symbol of past love or hidden mistakes, it was a reminder of endurance, of facing truth, and of surviving the storms life had thrown our way. I knew the road ahead would be steady and careful, but the foundation had been rebuilt. Respect, forgiveness, and the power of truth had restored what had almost been lost. The morning air was crisp, carrying the quiet whispers of the past as I made my way to the cemetery. Each step felt deliberate, heavy with memory, grief, and the lessons of the past months. The ring, now a symbol of everything I had endured, the mistakes, the revelations, and the enduring love, rested in my palm. Its weight felt different now, no longer a burden, but a reminder of survival, resilience, and the intricate threads that bind a family together. As I reached his grave, I knelt down, placing the ring carefully on the headstone. The sun glinted softly on its surface, catching the light like a small beacon of reflection. I traced the letters of his name, feeling the history of our shared life, the joys and hardships, the promises made and kept, and the lessons left behind. A single tear slipped down my cheek, not from sorrow alone, but from the quiet relief of resolution, the knowledge that I had faced every truth, every betrayal, and come through with my heart intact. Some rings, I thought, are made of gold, shining and permanent. Others are made of guilt, memory, and love, heavy, fragile, yet enduring. This ring had been all of those things. It had carried the weight of a secret that had almost destroyed us, had witnessed laughter and cruelty, pain and forgiveness. And now, in this moment, it felt lighter, transformed by the journey we had all survived. I stood slowly, looking out over the cemetery, feeling a quiet calm settle over me. The house, the family, the son who had returned, all of it now seemed to have found its balance again. Peace was no longer a distant hope, it was tangible, present in the sunlight, in the wind that brushed gently against my cheek, in the quiet acceptance of everything I could not change, and the courage to nurture everything I could. A subtle smile crept across my face, gentle but real. It was the smile of someone who had endured pain, faced betrayal, and discovered that redemption is not found in grand gestures, but in honesty, forgiveness, and the quiet strength of love. Life would continue, imperfect and unpredictable, but I knew now that the bonds we choose, the love we give, and the courage we muster are what truly define a family. I turned away from the grave, the ring left as a token of memory and closure, stepping into the light of a new day. The house would be filled with laughter again, hearts would heal, and life would move forward, carrying the lessons of the past while embracing the hope of the future. Some stories end quietly, without fanfare, but with profound understanding. This was ours, pain and betrayal, truth and forgiveness, sorrow and joy, all woven together into a tapestry of resilience. And in that stillness, I finally felt it, peace after pain, love surviving the storm, and a future waiting to be embraced. If you were in my shoes, would you have told the truth? Let me know in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and watch the next one, because every family hides a story worth telling. By the way, I'd love to know, where are you watching from?